Hi, and welcome to the Reclamation Project podcast. We are so glad that you're here, that you're listening, and hopefully that you are a part of the conversation. Last week, we started a discussion on love and marriage and relationship, and just in that, how communication works. And so today, we're going to continue that conversation. But before we do that, we're going to go back and hopefully communicate something better than we did the first time. We had some feedback from a listener who basically had some questions about something that we said pertaining to how communication works within relationships. And so we just want to address that and make sure that we're clear with that, and then we'll move on to our conversation today.
And I do want to say thank you to that listener, and feel free, those of you who listen on a regular basis, to do that. We want to make sure that it's not just words, but that our points are given out clearly. And feel free to let us know by all the different ways you can reach us if there's a point that you'd like clarified. So we were talking about how what things influence how we communicate and how we treat our partner, and the point of contention or clarification was in those 2 points we talked about, from the religious background that filters into a belief system, and it was the difference between the complementarian theory and the egalitarian theory. So let me just do a little better job of clarifying that. The complementarian theory is how I grew up, and is probably what we'd call old school Baptist word of thought, and the egalitarian theory is what after a lot of study and infusing myself into understanding what God says about marriage, is really what I believe now, and I think a lot of people track along with this. The complementarian theory obviously was when men were made to have authority over women, at least at marriage and in church, and together they have different gifts and roles, but the woman is there to complement. Thus the term complementarianism. And some of those points, and let me contrast it with egalitarian theory so we can understand both of them. So the first one, that men were made first before women, therefore men have a greater role. Well, the egalitarian theory, what I hold to now, is that order creation has nothing to do with authority, submission, or roles. The old school one was women were made to be a helper to men, and true, Genesis talks about the woman being the helpmeet. But in the egalitarian theory, which is that it's a partnership, the Hebrew word for helper refers to the strong helping the weak, the healthy helping the sick, the rich helping the poor. So rather than the helper being a submissive role, the truth is the helper is a prominent role. God says the husband will rule over his wife in the old school theory, and that's old school because it's Genesis chapter 3. But if you understand the egalitarian theory that when God created us equal to be partners, that Genesis 3 happened because of sin. It wasn't God's design. It's what has to be now because of sin. The rule over the wife is part of the curse. It's really not part of God's design. So I think the clarification came in. What exactly does Gary believe in? And I wanted to clarify now that I believe that men and women were made in the image of God to rule together over creation as equal partners. And because sin came in and tweaked the role, it wasn't God's design. So if we are truly partners and God created us in this sense of equalness, different roles, different responsibilities, but equal, it really will affect how we meet each other's needs and how we communicate.
Yeah, and I think we both agree that's the way it should be a partnership. It should be something that we have equal value in, we have equal say in, and that we continue to work towards our marriage or relationships together. Mm-hmm. One doesn't outweigh or outshine above the other. It's a 50-50. And so that's something we just wanted to clarify because we felt it may not have been so clear to you if you were listening. And so we want to make sure that we took a point to do that and make sure that everyone knew where we stood and how we viewed it as we continued the rest of the conversation. So thanks for the feedback again. And today we are going to continue our conversation and our discussion on communication. We're going to look a little bit deeper into that and what it looks like in a relationship. There's a few different points that we can look at and philosophies, I'd say, that we can look at to know how to communicate better to our partner, to our spouse, to the people that we are in a relationship with. I do want to say again that if you're not married, this is still for you. If you're never going to get married, this is still for you, because you can interject your status, whether it be single or whatnot. You can interject that status in place of the word married in whatever we're saying. We're just using that term as the term that we're focusing on, but I think that this is transferable and interchangeable, and that the points that we are making are ones that can be used in any relationship that you have, whether it be romantic or friendship or a coworker, whatever relationships you have out there. You can use this for all those relationships. So today we're going to start, first of all, looking at something that Gary's brought up a few times, which is the soul IDs and really how that looks in marriage.
Well, we talked in the past about soul IDs as it refers to discovering our own, and I'll just blow through that as a reminder. But once I know my soul ID, then I study my partner. We're going to really kind of lean towards communication as more than just verbiage, but how we meet needs, kind of the unspoken communication. Your spouse has emotional needs, they have physical needs, they have spiritual needs. What are they? How would you determine some of Katie's needs, Jeremy?
How loud she's yelling at me?
That's one. That's the obvious.
No, I mean, you observe.
Yeah.
You look at what she's asking, not even what she's saying, but go beyond what she's saying and what she's meaning.
Yeah.
And knowing what those things are, then you can dig down deeper into the root of what she's really needing, and she might not even know what that is.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's one thing to observe and identify the need. Then I think the next question is, how can I meet that? See, the way a covenant marriage relationship works, different than a contract we alluded to before, is that a contract says, you do your part, then I'll do my part. You do the job, and then I'll pay you. But a covenant relationship says, I'm going to do my part regardless. And so if that's the case, my goal is to meet my wife's needs. And if I'm meeting Candy's needs first, and she's meeting my needs, where both our needs are being met, and intimacy and that's real good nonverbal communication happening. So the soul ID were these things, and ID meaning internal demands. God has placed these internal demands in us, and they will be met one way or the other, positive or negative, sometimes neutral, but mostly positive or negative. So let's work through them really quickly when they apply to yourself, if you want to jot these down. And again, I'll repeat that if you'd like a list of these, a digital copy, email us, let us know, reach out in one of the different ways you can reach us, and I'll make sure that you get a copy of this. And then there's a Soul ID worksheet for spouses. I'd love to send that to you too. The first one is security, the peace. In us, certainty. God has placed in us this demand for certainty. And if you remember, each one of these demands were placed not only so someone could meet that needs, but really to prove to us that they could only be met in their fullness and completeness by God. So what makes me certain? And certain is finding peace and predictability and having a balance in my life. It's really the pleasure-pain principle. Like how can I be sure of something? I can meet that negatively or positively. The second one is community or belonging, the ability to feel a part of something, the need for a relationship, either friendship and or relationship. Third one is the biggest one. I think in all my work, I think these next two are probably the biggest, and that is significance. Significance or purpose. Everyone has a need to feel wanted, valued, purposeful, valuable, and how do I meet that? I think we talked before. So if I can be significant because I have I built the tallest building in the city, or I could be significant because I knocked down all the other buildings and now I have the tallest one. So that would be a negative way versus a positive way. And then the second one is love and or connection. I put those two in there because connections that would apply to those of you who might be single, or how these principles transfer across relationship boundaries. But even in a male-female relationship, people settle for connection because it's so much easier than love. Love demands a little more action than connection. But everyone has a need to be loved, to give out love and have it received, and to be given love and receive it. And I can meet it a lot of different ways. The negative ways is you'll find people who have had trauma or abuse in their background, and they just search for love as the old country song says, in all the wrong places. They're getting that need met temporarily, but it's negative. But there are positive ways to reach those too. The last two are more symptomatic of the needs, and it's just maturing and growth. Anything that's not growing dies. And then contribution, that we understand that just to always look inwardly really is boring and not fulfilling. But when I'm trying to contribute to something larger, bigger, outside of me, that's an amazing feeling. So that's how we check our soul ID. And in the next month or two, I'll have a 20 to 25 minute audio version that explains this in much more detail. And if you'd like that, just let us know by any of the different ways. So I guess the questions I would ask in a relationship are this. What do you think your top two needs are?
I'd probably say for me, there's three. And I hate to say three because you asked for two, but I think one kind of lends to another. The first one I'd say is for significant purpose. Mm-hmm. Needing that purpose, needing to feel like I'm accomplishing something, that I'm doing something, that I'm part of something, which kind of lends into love and union, feeling the need for love, feeling the need to be loved and cared for. And then I think as an offshoot of that one, probably the last one, contribution, feeling that I'm contributing to someone who I'm loving and in union with.
You'd mentioned that in a couple podcasts ago, and we talked about that of relationship really being in partnership. So contribution would be huge. Now, once you identify those, and this is a good exercise to do with a spouse or a friend or whoever you're applying this technique to, and we'd go through that, and I would say, so if Katie was sitting here and we were doing premarital counseling, I would say, so Jeremy, how well do you think Katie makes you feel significant on a scale to 1 to 10? 1 being not at all and 10 being amazing. So once you start to score, and I'll give you this worksheet, we'll kind of work through that for a second. It really lets you know, pinpoint on a map where you are in that relationship. What do you think Katie's top two needs are?
One, I think I know pretty well. First of all, I'm speaking for my wife, so she's probably going to tell me I'm wrong here. I always give a negative connotation to her when I'm talking about.
No, she's
she's yelling at me, for not doing dishes, right? Things like that. But I would have to say, community belonging is one of hers. Mm-hmm. A couple of years ago, we had talked about going back to a church setting. Just because she wanted that intimacy that comes with being in community. And I'm the total opposite. I could sit by myself and just enjoy days by myself. And she is not that way.
Right. So in a relationship, if you're trying to meet your need would be easy. Shut the door, turn on the TV, don't talk to anybody. To meet her need means you have to step out of your comfort zone. You actually have to serve her, and that comes from your observation that she loves people. She's probably like me. She could have somebody over the house every night. She could go to someone's house every night. Yeah, he says yeah, and you can't see the facial expression on the podcast, but I'll tell you that it would be equivalent to the rolling of eyes. So, what do you think her second need is?
That's a hard one. I'd probably say significance and purpose. Mm-hmm. She loves, she's a giving person. She wants to help people. So I don't know if that would be kind of the last one, which is contribution, or if it'd be significant purpose, because she wants to help people, so she wants to have that purpose of helping people.
And some of them overlap. And whenever you have one need that meets more than one area, if you have one event that meets 3 needs, it almost becomes an addiction. So they overlap. So she likes to contribute and help people, but that also is about connection. She loves to connect with people. Like you could help people without connection, anonymous check in the mail or groceries on the door where you don't have to interact. You could just drop. So that's still a contribution.
If anyone has that need, I can give you my address.
Yeah.
My Venmo account number.
Yeah. Or you could just send us your PIN count. We're fine with all of that. So it really does come down to, I need to study my wife. 41 years of marriage. In fact, we just had a conversation. We'll call it a conversation. That is the church, or a church expletive in there somewhere. We had a conversation, and I said to her just last week, really, 41 years, and you don't know what I meant by that, which is just the wrong thing to say. The fact is, understanding needs and understanding belief systems and behaviors, it's a lifetime thing. I'm not the same man I was when I married her. She's not the same woman. So that's constant observation and making mental notes. But if we stop there without trying to meet those needs, that's when a relationship starts to either stall or go backwards. So then there's love and connection, which we talked about. Then there's growth and maturity. One of the ways I tell premarital counseling couples, I know it's a good relationship if you're a better man for having her in your life and she's a better woman for having you in her life. So the maturity and the growth is, we're supposed to do that ourselves, but I need to make sure my wife grows, and I'm supposed to bring her about to maturity. That's Ephesians chapter 5. We talked about last podcast, the husbandman or the farmer. He nurtures and he feeds and he protects and he grows. And so that's what a good spouse does. Just off the cuff here, how is Katie a better person because you're in her life?
Wow. Can we do the inverse of that? Because
let's start with that, because that'll obviously be easier. How are you a better man because she's in your life?
She makes me step out of my comfort zone a lot. Because we're so opposite with the community, the sociability, things like that. She pushes me to be better, whether it be healthy eating or healthy lifestyle or whatnot. And I'm definitely not subscribing to that right now. But as I have my Whataburger sitting right here. She definitely wants me to be the best version of myself. So she pushes me. Some people call it nagging. I'll call it pushing. Yes. She pushes me to be better, and I think that has definitely changed me.
Yeah. So you just prolifically skipped over the first part, that how is she a better woman because you're in her life?
I definitely married up, so how did you even say that?
Yep. Well, you keep her from being alone.
Yes, I guess so. I would have to say I probably do the same thing that she does, which is I push her to be better. I push her to think of things differently. We have completely, I wouldn't say completely, but we have very different perspectives on how things work, and so when we talk about those things, we definitely help each other work through them because we're bringing different perspectives from it. So I'd probably say that's, part of it is as, she pushes me to be more social and to be better with people and whatnot. I also push her in a different direction, give her a different perspective on being social and help her through situations that she's dealing with that.
Yeah. So as you each do that for each other, you can see the bond that happens and love grows deeper. And we'll talk on another podcast in a week or so about intimacy, because that's even a piece of that as well. I was thinking about that, about my wife and I. She I guess pushes is a good word. I live constantly in a move in one direction and squirrel. I live in the land of squirrel.
You hear the dog from Up? Squirrel!
And she keeps me redirected. Sometimes she has to physically turn me. And sometimes it comes across as nagging. I just did a men's camp this past weekend, and we were taking some principles out of Samson. The fact it was the comparing of character and giftedness. But if you remember the Samson story where it says Delilah was sitting there and she nagged him until he was tired to death. And then I stopped and I said, my wife wants to do one of those ancestries.com, but I don't think she has to now because she actually has Philistine blood in her. This was luckily, we'll get back to her now because I just put it on the air. And so I can look at it at nagging, but if I understand really what she's trying to do for me, it's not. She's trying to better me. I think for her, my wife is she's an incurable introvert. And I do force her out of her comfort zone within reason. And so there again, when I'm meeting her needs and she's meeting my needs, that's nonverbal communication. If I just do something for her that makes her feel significant, kind of way she grew up, she wasn't made to feel significant. So for me, that I know I saw her playbook. Her playbook is she doesn't feel significant, and I get to come in and I get to be the hero. And that there's every marriage, every relationship needs a hero, and if we start with ourselves, that's always a winning situation. The last one is contribution. Just do we contribute even as a couple to something that's greater than ourselves? It's kind of cool to figure out your needs, and I'm always being hers and she's being me. That is great for us. But when we link arms and do something outside ourselves together, that increases the connection, that increases the love. Now I share my significance and certainty with her, and the relationship only gets stronger from that point. So what I have here is what I call a Soul ID worksheet that you work through. So husband and wife would sit there and we'd go through each point, and we'd ask security, peace, and comfort. How well does your partner make you feel secure? 1 to 10, and then you have to answer why. And then sometimes I would sit there and I would, Jeremy, if I was talking to you and Katie, I would look at you and you're going to answer for Katie. So I would look at you and say, Katie, how well does Jeremy love you? Well, you have to be honest about yourself because you're actually answering as you think she would answer, and that is really quite humbling. This worksheet's available if you email. It's just a good exercise. Honestly, what I've learned in 41 years, you just can't work on a marriage too much. It's a really great thing to do, to work on it. It causes outward communication. It actually clarifies things in a relationship. In fact, we talked about expectations before, and if my wife's number one soul ID was love and connection, and I thought it was significance, and she didn't share that with me, I have spent a lot of effort meeting her secondary need and not her primary need. So again, email us, contact us some way. We'll send you this little test, and you can sit with your spouse, significant other, friend, coworker, whatever, whoever you're trying to develop a deeper relationship with. It's a really good test to do.
Well, I think it is a great test. It's a great tool to have to identify how to communicate better. And I think there's another one out there that we haven't really talked too much about, and that's the 5 love languages.
Yeah.
Gary Chapman came out with a book, I think it was 95, 96, somewhere in there. And based off of his counseling sessions that he had been doing, he identified 5 love languages that just talk about how we receive love and how we give love. But I also think when you can identify that love language of your partner, you can communicate better to them, because in the same way that you meet the soul ID, you're also meeting them in the place that they're at, that they receive it best from you and that you can give it best to them.
That is so right. So the great combination is to identify their soul ID and meet that need with their love language. That's just a win-win. And it's good for having goals, and you can write these down and say, this is my goal in our marriage to do these things. But I got to tell you, the true success of a goal isn't the accomplishment of the goal. The true success of a goal, I believe, is who I've become as a person while meeting that goal. So take, for instance, you want to lose weight. The goal is to lose 20 pounds. Success isn't that I lost 20 pounds. The success is who I've become. I've had to become intentional. I've had to become disciplined. I've had to become more aware. And so when you apply all those to your relationships, it's not just meeting the goal of meeting your needs, but in doing that, it's changing you as a person. So we kind of talked about our love languages last time as a personal level, but we're going to look at it this way from a spouse's point of view. And the first one is words of affirmation. What could Katie say to you that just puts a smile on your face? And remember, there are FFA regulations that we need to
FCC.
or FCC. Yeah.
Are we flying planes now?
If we're flying, those would translate.
Oh man. Okay, you asked me a question. Let's go back to it.
What could Katie say as a word of affirmation that would make you feel good, make you smile, make you feel maybe significant or loved? What one area could she touch and always hit a home run?
I think if she, complimented or brought up a place where I feel deficient,
Yeah.
I don't know what that is because I'm a pretty confident guy, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That is very sarcastic in
Yeah.
case you don't know me. If there's a place where I just feel like I'm failing, to encourage me, to bring me up, tell me how awesome I did at it, et cetera. I think that would work out. I'm trying to think of one specifically right now.
Well, that would touch that idea of making you feel significant. Because if you think you're failing, you feel less than significant. So,
Yeah.
so she says something that makes you feel wanted, needed, valued. You're
Yeah.
doing a good job.
Yeah, if she says how awesome of a husband, a father I am, those are places that I continually see that I need work.
Yeah.
Even today, my kids are sick, they're at home, and I'm thinking, well, crap, I'm being a pretty crappy father right now. I'm not paying attention to them as much as I should, and I'm working through work emails and whatnot. So, if she said something like that, I think it would probably, skyrocket at that point.
So based on what you know of her, what word of affirmation could you say to her that would make her light up?
Probably the same. I'd hate to go with the same thing, but there's times where I've told her, she's a great mom.
Yeah.
She is. She's a freaking great mom.
Yeah.
She works at it hard, and she doesn't always say that. And so there's been times where I've said that, and she's just lit up because she's like, I haven't been feeling it.
Yeah.
And Katie, you're a great mom.
It's funny because I have this form that's called behaviors I like from my partner and behaviors I don't like, and they all have symptoms that follow. Like behaviors I like from my partner, it causes feelings, and then you get a response from it. Simply, here's an example. I like it when you tell me I'm pretty, because the feeling is that the wife would say it makes me feel loved and wanted, and then the response would be, it makes me want to be close to you. So if you're a husband and you're thinking, I'd really wish my wife was closer to me, you'd have to go back to let's give her some affirmation and tell her she's pretty. These all really work together. Sometimes we love to make us feel good as opposed to make our partner feel good. Today is about meeting needs for them. I sat with one of Phoenix's finest, and I wasn't getting a ticket. We were actually in a counseling session, and he's just a big guy, and he knows, he listens to this, and he knows who he is. And thank you for letting me share your story. We were sitting there, and he was telling me how much more he wants of his wife, and I looked at him. I said, "You don't really love her like you think you do." He pushed the chair away from the table and stood up, and my first thought is, oh my God, I can't even call a cop because he's a cop. and he said, how could you say that? And I said, I'll tell you how I can say that if you'll sit down. And I said, so let me just use your words. I'm going to use your words here, not mine. I want her to be closer to me. I want her to love me like I love her. I want more physical intimacy. I want more romance. And I go, so what's the prominent pronoun in all of those? He said, I go, correct. I didn't say you didn't love her, but you love her because you want something. True biblical, agape, unconditional love is, I love them if I get nothing in return. So some of these quizzes and some of these soul IDs and love languages helps identify what their needs are, and it puts me in a mindset of meeting their needs and not worried about mine getting met. My words of affirmation for me to light me up is just to tell me I did a good job. And I mentioned that before. If I'm speaking somewhere and there's 500 people there, and all 500 said, that was the greatest thing I've ever heard. I would probably agree with them and tell them that they've spoken well. But I need to get in the car and I need my wife to say, wow, that might have been one of your best ones. Even if I know she's lying, I need to hear that. For her, words of affirmation really just don't even register. I'm sitting there trying to think what I could say based on a lot of her background, her past. I could tell her she's beautiful because she is, and she doesn't want to hear that. I think because she is a hands-on person, when she does something craft-wise or she builds something, just to tell her, man, that is an amazing job, that does light her up. So words of affirmation. And by the way, if you're keeping notes at home, you ought to do this. You ought to make a list of all the things that you know she likes. You need to be looking constantly for a way to affirm with words of affirmation, whether it's compliments or a note. You know what I don't like? I shouldn't say I don't like because I think I do it. But when I see people just always do words of affirmation on Facebook and I know they don't do it in person, that bugs me. You know what I'm saying? Like, you haven't told your wife you loved her to her face for 6 months, but you do it like once a week on Facebook. Like, I don't know about the sincerity of that.
Well, it's the same thing as pictures. You're like, how much of this is reality?
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
Because you see it at face value and you're just like,
Yeah.
it doesn't seem sincere. It seems like it took you 15 times to take that picture,
Yeah.
before you got the one that looks good.
And then when you have to use Snapchat filters, then I'm like, that takes a little sincerity out
Yeah.
of the whole thing.
Well, in the same way, the words of affirmation, it's like, if you're just doing that, you don't do it in a present type of way, then it's not as meaningful. It doesn't have the same effect, and it doesn't, it's not registering probably with the person that you're,
So
telling.
if they don't think you're sincere, I think they start to resent those words of affirmation as just more of a duty that you set them. So instead of giving takeaways at the end, maybe we'll insert one on each one of these points. So take time this week to do something affirming, whether it's a card, a note, a letter, something that you don't ordinarily do to tell your spouse, something that you appreciate, love, or respect about them. Do that this week for words of affirmation. He identified as another love language, which was quality of time. Quality time just means we let us spend time together. And in the context of our busy lives, I like that he puts quality of time and not quantity of time, because I think I fail quite often at quantity of time. But quality time, how big is that for you and or Katie? Quality of time.
I think for Katie, it's huge. At least when we first got married, that was one of her big ones, was quality of time and spending that time together. I don't know that it is her primary so much anymore, but at one time it was. But spending that time with her, spending that, intentionally, putting aside what you want to do to spend time with her, is just a big one. I mean, it fills her love bucket, so to speak.
Yeah. And not by default. It's when you sacrifice something you want to do to spend time with her. Not just, I'm bored and I have nothing to do, I'll sit next to you.
Yeah, it's not like, hey, I'll sit next to you and I'm going to be on my phone.
Correct. Yep.
Which, by the way, she
says quite often.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure many people feel that way.
Yep.
It's, what we've become as a society is people who, instead of talking to each other, we sit next to each other and think that that's, that's not quality time. That's just time.
That's just time.
And
that's usually the main complaint, is that you spend a lot of time with me. It's not quality, and you're here, but you're not present. So I mean, you got to make eye contact. You actually have to listen, and you don't listen while you're checking the Diamondback score on your phone, as I was doing last night. That's not listening. It's eye contact. It's maybe letting her know I heard what she said and responding to a question, which means I'm actually was listening. So, quality of time, I think, is big for my wife. I don't know that it's one of my primary ones, but it's obviously a secondary one. The one I always wondered, why did Gary Chapman put that in there? I don't know that it's really a love language, but I guess it is for a few people, and that's just receiving gifts or giving gifts. My wife could care less, honestly, if she got it. What about Katie?
Oh yeah, she doesn't care.
Yeah. What about you?
I tried to buy her something for our anniversary one time, just a nice piece of jewelry, and she returned it. And it's like, I don't need that. I'd much rather have time with you. This is like one of our first anniversaries.
Yep.
I'd much rather have time with you than this piece of jewelry.
Yeah.
I thought I was being great, but I guess not. For me, I think probably when I was younger, it was
Well, the
something.
truth is, she can't give you a gift you haven't already bought for
No,
yourself.
I buy stuff and I return it like crazy. Anyone who knows me knows I buy stuff and I return it. I love Amazon's 30-day return period. In fact, I'm about to use it on some stuff that's right in front of me. So, no, the gifts. No, I mean, if it's thoughtful, not necessarily something that costs a lot of money, but if it's thoughtful, I mean, I also know people who do. They want to receive gifts. They want to receive monetary stuff from people, and that's how they feel loved. But I also don't feel like it's a true love.
Yeah.
When I in the same way, when I see this, when I say, is it really a true
You question the sincerity of it. Yeah.
Is it something that truly fills people up when they get something?
Yeah.
I don't think so. Every time I see that, I see people who are very shallow.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry if that's you, if you're listening, and that's your gift, but that's just been my experience. I've seen people that are very shallow with that, and when that was maybe my primary, I was probably very shallow at the same time. So
I think so, and how these can combine. Sometimes giving a gift could be if I mean these can overlap. So if they love words of affirmation, then just giving them a card with some great. You're the best mom in the world. That knocks out 2 love language with 1 stone.
Or if it's something
card, as the case may be.
Well thought out. Okay, Friends, watching Friends.
Yeah.
And in one of the first 2 seasons, Ross gets Rachel this pendant that they saw 6 months earlier.
Yeah.
That reminded her of something that her grandmother had, and that's what turns Rachel to
towards him
against shallow people.
Yeah.
but turns her towards him not because of the monetary value, not because it was a gift that she wanted, but because he remembered something that she saw that reminded her of her childhood, and he wanted to give her that because of that. And so that,
that actually became more important than the pendant.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's how I think gift giving can happen, is if it's something that's well thought out, something that's really meaningful, like a card or whatever else. I think that's when giving a gift really works, and it's not a shallow type of deal.
It took some thought. It took some sacrifice and some thinking and some listening and some observing. And
it didn't have to happen on a birthday or an anniversary or anything like that. It just happens because you want to give that to somebody. So maybe, there is some credence to that.
Yeah. So be creative this week and think of something you could give your spouse that would light them up, even if it's combining 2 of these, some quality of time or some words of affirmation. But be creative. Be creative, because when the creativity shows there's thought behind it. Anybody can stop by
Walgreens.
Walgreens, yeah. In fact, one of the couples I meet with, she actually brought it as, I don't normally do show and tell in counseling, but she brought it anyway. So on her birthday, he gave her a card, and he didn't even sign it because he goes, "You know who I am." And okay, that's an issue, Be creative and try that this week if you're taking notes here. Do a gift of something that took some thought and some creativity and some sincerity and light your partner up. The 4th one is another one which I struggle with as far as a love language, but acts of service, where you actually do. Now, this happens to be my wife's primary one. I could tell her I love her. I could tell her she's pretty. I could give her a gift. I could spend quality of time with her, and all those would be okay. But I sweep out the garage and take out the dishes in the dishwasher, and I am good to go for the evening. I don't understand that one. How is Katie when it comes to acts of service? You already talked about clean dishes and a countertop, so I know that's got to be somewhere in there.
She doesn't let me clean anymore. That's part of the way that
because your acts of service suck. Is that what she's saying? Okay.
But acts of service, I would say, it's kind of like gift giving in the fact that if you do something out of the norm, that
without being asked or
told, then that goes way further than just doing something, serving. It's kind of like we talked about. Did we talk about it on air? I don't know. But as we talk about serving people through missions and through homeless ministries and through all that kind of stuff, is you can go because it's something mandated,
Yeah.
or you can go because it's your heart.
Yeah.
And I think acts
Yeah.
of service is the same thing.
I
you know?
agree.
It kind of reminds me of, what was that show? Oh, it was in The Office, one of my favorite shows. But
I know you're home thinking Jeremy watches an awful lot of TV.
Yes, I do. I binge watch stuff. But Ryan Howard is he's been arrested, and he is trying to he's gone back to the office to be a temporary secretary while Pam is off in New York, and he talks about his community service and touts the stuff that he's doing, and Jim says, "Isn't that mandated community service?" It's like, no one has to tell me I need to serve my community. but it's the same. You can do something out of your heart, or you can do something because it's mandated, because it's required for college, or you know, a judge requires it, like that, or because you feel like it's something you have to do because it's, you know, it's something that's expected of you. It's when it's not expected and you've done that's
I think if a spouse has to nag you to do it and you do it, they don't. It's not a love language. It's almost they resent you for having to nag you. So so try that at home this week. Make a list of some things you could do for your partner outside the ordinary. Is not something she asks you to do or nags you to do on a constant basis. Do something that might surprise them, which means it's going to take some forethought and some creativity, and you're actually going to have to pay attention and be observant. So acts of service. And then the last love language, every guy has this in the top two. It's not always number one, but it's usually one or two, and that's physical touch. There is something big about touch. I remember when they first built the new building at the church we both served at, and they showed me my office, and I had to sit behind this big desk. And I'm like, you can't counsel people sitting behind a big desk. You have to pull your chair around, and you have to sit there, and sometimes you have to touch them on the arm just to make a point. You saw the documentary about the little babies in, I think, Romania that were suffering because they didn't get physical touch. Touch is important. How important on a scale of 1 to 10 is it to you? Physical touch.
I'd say it's my secondary, probably.
Okay.
You know, I don't need it necessarily, but there's times where I just want to cuddle up and watch a movie with Katie. You know, there's other times where I just want to be sitting on a completely different couch on the other side of the room from her.
That's after she yelled at him for not taking out the dishes,
yes.
right?
But taking out the dishes?
Or putting in the dishes, yeah.
But yeah, it's just I think it's something that everyone has, like you said.
Yeah.
But it's something for me that's just it's a here and there thing.
Yeah.
It's not something that I hugely need to feel satisfied.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a secondary to that.
Yeah, I would say that too. And you know, guys, when they see anything that starts with physical, they think that has to do with sex, and that's not even it. Sometimes it's just holding hands, or sometimes it's just a back rub, or just sitting leg next to leg while you're watching Friends or Office. You know,
or How I Met Your Mother.
Or how I Met
Parks
Your
and
Mother.
Rec.
Yeah.
Or the Goldbergs.
Yeah.
Do I need to keep naming them?
Wow, Jeremy needs to work for Cox TV or something.
I know, right?
Physical touch for my wife is big, but she'll never ask for it based on a lot of her baggage due to her in her life that happened to her. When we were first married, I didn't understand it because I always thought, and the funny thing is, I think I might have mentioned in a prior podcast that in my family there wasn't a lot of hugging, there wasn't a lot of physical touch. Physical touch to me meant my rear end met my dad's belt. That was physical touch. That's not what he's talking about here as a love, because it didn't feel like a love language. Although, I guess you discipline those you love, the Bible says, but I still don't look at it as a love language. But based on my wife, some of the hard things she went through, I'd come home and I'd put my hand on her knee and she'd pull it away. I'm like, wow, what did I do? It had nothing to do with about me, until there were times when I realized if you study your partner, you know they need a hug. If they say, get over here and hug me, well, then that becomes almost resentful that I had to tell you. 41 years, I had to tell you to come over and hug me. I know when she needs a hug. I know when it's probably her third. It's not even her top two, but I know when she needs it because I study her.
Well, and that's what it all comes down to. Is it, we have these great tools, of soul IDs and the love languages, but really what it comes down to is in marriage and in communication, the biggest component is continuing to pursue and study the person that you're in the relationship with, whether it be partner, spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend, coworker, whatever. Is you need to learn how do they tick, how do they work, and when you do that, you realize the times where you need to step in and the times where you need to step back.
Absolutely.
And the things that they need to fill them up, and the things that you just need to, hey, I don't need to say that necessarily, unless I really want to tick them off, which is another study.
But
if we're looking for positive communication,
we're staying positive.
We want to study them. We want to continue to just to immerse ourselves in who they are and knowing who they are and what they're about. I think that's the one thing that a lot of marriages, lack is once you're married, and this is how I felt when I got married, is once you're married, oh, hey, you don't have to work so hard anymore to pursue. And I remember a buddy of mine told me before we were both married, he said, that's the biggest thing missing from marriage. And now 10 years later, I'm saying that's the biggest thing missing from marriage is that
constant pursuit.
You need to continue to pursue not only them, but understanding who they are and what they're about and what they need from you and how you can meet those needs.
Yep. That's a great point. So in physical touch, you have to be aware. Don't ignore your partner's signals or the time they may need it's pretty obvious, like when they turn towards you and bend over, like scratch my back, when they put their back in your face. But a good back rub when they need one, or when touch is important. And again, touch is when you're meeting their needs. Physical touch is for them, not for you. We get the icing on the cake from doing that, but it's again trying to meet their need. So try some of these at home. And in fact, if you have some that work for you, let us know. Email us, send any of the ways you can contact us. Let us know what worked for you or what you might have tried, or that you thought, man, if you would have told them this on the podcast, we'd love to hear from you how you meet your partner's love languages.
Yeah, so you can get in touch with us a bunch of different ways, and one is that you can go on Facebook, facebook.com/RP podcast. Then we also have an Instagram, and that's Instagram and at RP Podcast, and then also on Twitter at the RP Podcast. We also have a website, and you can go there for any of our social media, any of our podcasts, any information you might want to know about us is right there, and that is at rppodcast.com. We thoroughly enjoyed this time and talking and discussing what it means to communicate and to really know your partner well, and we hope that is something that impacted you, that helped you out, and if it did, we just want you to give us some feedback on that and just let us know how we can continue to help in that pursuit. So until next time, we hope you have a great week and that you try out some of those different things that Gary said to do about love languages, and hopefully you have some success. Until next time, hope you have a great one.